Tackle Talk. Tony here, Paul's here, Chad's going to be joining us in a little bit. This is Bass and Beer Radio's Tuesday night series, and we're going to do something a little bit different today. So welcome. Thanks for joining us again on this Tuesday. Apologize for we've been a little absent here recently. A lot of the guys have got a lot of things going on.
Work's been a little hectic lately, so.
Yeah, I know Paul's got a new work schedule. I got a new work schedule coming up here soon. And I apologize in advance. My allergies have been kicking my arse all day. So you're going to hear me sneeze about 400 times. It is what it is. Sorry. But tonight, we are going to do something a little bit different. So for those of you that are just tuning in or maybe haven't watched the show before, on our Tuesday night series, we like to pick one specific bait or tactic and kind of get into the weeds on it. Tonight, we're going to pick the top 5, and I'm sure there'll be some others runners up here. The top 5 baits for smallmouth, and we're definitely going to give away a little bit of juice on this one. Paul and I have been spending a lot of time chasing the bronze backs here recently, and
more fun.
Oh, it's tons of fun. It's it's a whole nother challenge when it comes to the sport of fishing in this area. Everything is so focused on title. It's a completely different skill set. I tell everybody in my club and guys that I'm friends with around here from October to November, I only chase smallmouth. You might see me not on Conowingo or Upper Susquehanna like once or twice a month when I'm out fishing. Most of the time I'm chasing them smallmouth.
I'm not as hardcore as Tony, but I love chasing smallmouth. And usually when it gets into November, from November to December, I'm strictly smallmouth. I love chasing big smallmouth. So
it's a totally different thing, and we'll get into it, and we'll tell some of our best tips. But I mean, me personally, I'll take a 4-pound smallmouth over a 5-pound largemouth any day. And I guess
I'm still fishing tournaments up until like mid-November. So
right.
I'm kind of just going after whatever. Right. I'm going after whatever species is getting me give me the biggest bag that I can. So a lot of times in November, our club always has our last club tournament in November, and it's always out of tiding. So I'm typically chasing big largemouth. Caught a lot of big bags of largemouth in November.
You think smallmouth will be a player in that tournament?
It could be.
So
I'm definitely gonna see. I'm gonna check it out. I've got some smallmouth spots that are in the lower Susquehanna that are usually turning on around that time of year. Our tournament's on the 19th of November, so I'm gonna check it out. And if they're there, they're definitely gonna play. I usually catch some big ones this time of year. Usually late fall, early spring, I can usually catch some really big ones down there.
Awesome. Well, that sounds good. I guess we'll get right into it. So a little bit of history for this show. So like I said, me and Paul have been chasing smallmouth here recently. I want to say a big shout out to a fellow Team Outcast member, Kevin Willingham. Him and I fished the Conowingo Open on this last Sunday. We ended up winning 3rd place on a tough day. Caught a bunch of fish. I thought for sure we were going to get smoked just because we caught a bunch of fish, but seemed like a tough day for everybody else, so I guess we kind of got on the right deal. Congratulations to the guys that won. Mr. Herb and Mr. Marcus had a really nice 15-pound bag with a 5/16 lunker. This was obviously up in Conowingo, so those big fish are starting to come out. We had second lunker. I actually got my PB of a 4.27, narrowly beat my previous PB of a 4.25. But it's also my Conowingo PB too, so that was kind of cool. Never once thought it was over 4 pounds. I usually am notorious for big iron fish. I was like, oh, this is a 3.5 pounder all day, and then we weighed it, and it was 4.27. I ended up getting a free T-shirt out of it and a second lunker, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And the first thing I want to say about smallmouth this time of year, you find one of them, put your poles down, put your spot lock on, and fish that area and fish it hard. Throw a variety of baits, and we're going to get into the baits, but 9 times out of 10, if you catch one in the spot, you're around way more than one, and you just got to figure out what they want to eat.
Yeah, this time of year, they really start to group up, and you can catch a lot of fish out of the same area. And when I say the same area, when we say the same area, we're not talking about like fishing out on the flats and you're fishing like like a 200-yard stretch of grass. We're talking the same cast.
Yes.
So you're making the same exact cast, and there's going to be a lot of times there's going to be multiple fish there. It can be fun. It can be really fun. It can be really humbling.
Yeah. Oh God, yes.
You can,
Yes,
especially on Conowingo, which is a place where the water level varies a lot, and it's kind of like it's a lot like tidal fishing, where you have very specific bite windows when there's certain current, certain water levels.
Yep.
They're gonna bite differently. A lot like tidal water. If you're used to fishing for largemouth on tidal water, how that water level can really affect your bite. It does the same thing on Conowingo. The stuff that we're going to talk about today is not specific to Conowingo. I do a lot of smallmouth fishing in a lot of areas. Fished a tournament at Deep Creek a few weeks ago. Didn't do that great. Ended up 10th out of like 24 boats. But did something that nobody really does on Deep Creek. I caught all my fish out of 27 to 33 feet of water. Most of my fish, anyway. I did go last 2 hours of the day. I went shallow and caught a couple largemouth. Made a couple calls. But I got a local for a co-angler, and the sound of his voice when I told him we were drop shot in 33 feet of water, his tone just immediately changed to what the heck have I gotten myself into? And he actually ended up winning the tournament on the co-angler side. So it was pretty cool. He's fished Deep Creek a lot, and it was something that he's never done. And hopefully, that's something that that he'll learn from. Know that it gives him another tool in his arsenal. Because like I said, most of our fish came out of all but 3 of our fish came out of over 25 feet of water.
It's awesome.
Yeah, that's my favorite way to fish. So Tony can tell you we spent all day Friday fishing 35 feet of water. Not with much success. We were just checking some things out, but that's the way that I love to fish. So let's start with that. My first bait. So this is not the exact bait that I caught my fish on at Deep Creek, but the basic setup is just a drop shot. And I throw a drop shot a lot. I throw it a lot for largemouth. I throw it a lot for smallmouth. It's one of my go-to baits. For anyone who's not familiar with a drop shot, it's just you have bait up here, you have a weight down at the bottom. So your bait, like if your weight's sitting on the bottom, your bait's up off the bottom. It's a really killer bait for smallmouth, especially if you go up north. You get into any of those northern lakes, northern rivers. St. Lawrence, Lake Ontario, you're gonna want to be throwing a drop shot. So my number 5 bait is 100% drop shot. And as far as baits go on a drop shot, whatever your favorite bait is, I don't think it makes a huge difference. Of what the bait is. A lot of times color will make a difference, but I don't think it makes a huge difference what the exact bait you're throwing is. So this is a Zoom Z drop. I've caught a lot of fish on this. This is a morning dawn color. This is a really good bait or a really good tactic for smallmouth. Now, the important thing about a drop shot, there's 2 important things about a drop shot. One is the hook. So I have this one rigged up, Texas rigged. I will fish that if I'm fishing around wood, if I'm fishing around a lot of cover. So if I'm fishing around a lot of cover, I'm gonna use a Texas rig hook. Now this is a very, very small extra wide gap hook. You can see how small that is.
Yes, it is.
This is a number 1 Gamakatsu extra wide gap hook. Typically, I use a straight shank hook when I'm Texas rigging a drop shot. Straight shank finesse worm hook, the owner cover shot hook. That's my go-to. Usually in a 2-aught. Usually if I'm fishing Texas rigged like this, I'm usually fishing like a robo worm or something like that. Texas rig generally more for largemouth. Usually when I'm fishing for smallmouth, I'm nose hooking because I'm fishing a lot of open cover, a lot of rock where I'm not getting hung up in the wood a lot. So your nose. So you see your hook here. Nose hook, you just run it through the top of it. and that's it. Just like that.
So for everybody watching the comments, I did go ahead and link our actual Tuesday night tackle talk episode that we previously did on drop shotting. So for any questions about drop shotting, go ahead and check that video out. It is in the comments, so you guys can check that out. But we get really in the weeds of everything for drop shots and stuff like that.
So the other thing that I want to mention about drop shots here is the weight, and this is a ball weight. I don't fish a ball weight a lot. This just happened to be, it was raining and I didn't feel like uncovering my boat. So I usually fish a cylinder weight, but you want to fish as light of a weight as you can get away with. The lighter the weight that you fish, the less you're going to get hung up. So if you can get away with an 1/8 ounce weight, fish an 1/8 ounce weight. If you're fishing a lot of current, you may have to go up to 3/4. So I'll fish anything from an 1/8 to 3/4. This past weekend on Conowingo, I was fishing 3/8 and 1/2 ounce. Depth of water can determine the weight. I was fishing a 1/2 ounce because I was fishing 30 feet of water, and I was dropping the fish that were in the 20s. They were suspended in the 27-foot range, and I just wanted to get it down quick. So I was fishing a 1/2 ounce weight. I could just drop it and it would just boom right to the bottom, and that's where I wanted it. Fishing like that, you're not going to get snagged a lot. We were fishing scattered rock piles. So I could get away with a heavier weight because there's not a lot to get snagged up in there. When you go up north, if you're fishing like the St. Lawrence, areas like that have a lot of current, you might need to fish at 3/4. I mean, I was fishing at 3/4 a lot on the St. Lawrence simply because the current's so strong. And you're doing a lot of drifting, and you need a heavy weight to be able to match how fast your bait's moving. So you want your bait moving the same speed as the boat. So when you're doing a drift, you're basically just drifting down a contour line, and you want your bait moving the same speed as your boat. If it's moving slower than the boat, it's going to get hung up. It's going to get hung up on the rocks back there. If it's moving the same speed as your boat, it's just going to bloop, bloop, bloop over the rocks. And when it pops up over those rocks, that's when you're going to catch them. And that's not really something that's totally applicable just to the St. Lawrence. We have a lot of areas down here that get a lot of current. So you match your weight to the current, whether it be the lower bay, the upper bay, fishing for smallmouth in the lower Susquehanna, or Conowingo, where if you're fishing any of the discharges, or if you're up in the rocks where there's a lot of current, you may need to go to that heavier weight. But that's our bait number one, and that's a drop shot. So I'm a big fan of a drop shot. I've caught a lot of fish on it. I've caught a lot of big fish on it. My PB smallmouth came on a drop shot. That was on a flatworm. That's another bait that I fish a lot. But I don't think that, I don't think that bait matters as much as presentation. So I think your presentation and being able to present the bait correctly, with the correct weight and the correct distance between your hook and your weight. So sometimes that might be, this one's about 6 inches, give or take, maybe 7. Up to, I'll go up to usually maybe 24. I actually had one rigged with about 24 inches of leader in between the hook and the weight on Friday, and Tony's like, "What the hell?"
Yeah, that's crazy. I was like, "What are we doing?"
The reason for that was I know this time of year that those, on Conowingo, some of those fish will suspend out in deeper water. So I want that longer bait to keep it up off the bottom more, because I'm fishing 27 feet of water. The fish are suspending in 24, 25. So I want it as close to that level of that they are as possible, because they're going to follow the bait down.
Right.
And a lot of times they won't follow it all the way to the bottom. So if it goes down to, if your bait goes down to, if you're 27, your bait goes down to 25, they'll follow it down and just eat it. So weight, hook, and the amount of distance in between is probably your most important thing with a drop shot.
Cool. Bait number 2. It's one of my favorites. I throw it a ton. This is a very beginner-friendly smallmouth bait. You kind of can never really go wrong with it, and that is the tried and true, the Uncle Ned, the Deadly Nedley, but it is the Ned rig. This will catch you a ton of fish. Just end of sentence, period. And this is one of the this is one of the probably the most versatile bait that we're going to talk about tonight. The reason I say that is you can swim it, you can vertically, jig it kind of like a drop shot, although that's not probably the most effective method. You can cast it and swim it, you can crawl it, you can hop it, you can kind of do whatever you want with it. You can throw it into wood, you can throw it into rocks, you can throw it into current. We'll get into all that stuff. Can't go wrong with the traditional Z-Man TRDs and all the Z-Man gear. Me personally, whenever I throw this guy, it's decked out in Z-Man. I have the Z-Man head, I have the Z-Man baits on there, the TRD. For me, that's just the deal, right? I've had very good success with it, and I have no reason to change and to go to other baits. That's not to say other brand baits don't work. The first thing I want to talk about this is the weight. I go back and forth on this, but I think it depends a lot on time of year. I think in this time of year and in the spring, when the fish are a little bit more aggressive, I think you can get away with more of a heavier weight. So like this one here has, I believe, the 1/5 ounce weight on here. Quarter. Okay. But it's a heavier weight. So when those fish are more active, that heavier weight, a lot of times with this bait, when they see it, and this time of year especially, you'll catch most of your fish on the initial fall. I feel like a lot of that's attributed to that heavy weight that falls down, and you get that kind of that good fall, that good reaction, right? So I like this time of year to throw a heavier weight. I also like to match my colors with shad, and that was a big deal on Friday. Thursday, I'm sorry. So what that means is, so if you go look at your selections from Z-Man, they have a whole bunch of colors. And for most soft plastics, when it comes to smallmouth, no matter what time of year it is, there's 3 categories of colors. There's dark, there's light, then there's shad. And shad is really, really, really important in the fall time.
Which is dark right now. Dark colors, crayfish colors, and shad colors.
Sure.
Is what I would say. Because your crayfish colors are going to be your green pumpkins. It's going to be your green pumpkins. This is Bama crawl. It's got a little orange on there. It's very crayfishy. Your shad colors are going to be. For some reason, we're not getting comments.
Yeah, I don't know why.
We did get because we got a couple comments earlier, but
interesting.
You really got to, in my opinion, Tony agrees. Match the hatch. And you don't have to match it exactly. Smallmouths are pretty aggressive usually, so color's not a huge player. Your basic colors are a huge player. So if it's like a shad color, that could be Z-Man. What's that? The deal.
It is the deal. Yep.
So the deal. Yeah. See, Adam just commented. What's up, Adam? I'm not sure.
We're going to figure out the comments thing here. You guys keep commenting, and we'll get to them once we get it spun up here. We see him on. Paul's got his phone here, so we are going to try to respond to as best we can.
So back to the Ned rig. I'm actually the opposite of Tony. I will fish as light of a weight as possible. On as slow as fall as possible. I only kind of like with the drop shot. I only fish heavier weights and heavier current. It's, to me, like I just want to get it down on the bottom. I just want to be able to, I want it to slow fall down to the bottom and then just barely be able to pull it up over those rocks. That's just me. And that's the nice thing about these baits is it's very beginner friendly. There's no real wrong way to fish them.
Yeah, no, that's the best part.
I've caught fish just steady reeling them. Just throw them, cast them out, and just like slow reel them along the bottom, and they'll catch fish.
One of the best ways to actually fish them, and I've found this is really effective in like the summertime when the bite can be really tough, is dead sticking. So what dead sticking is you find these fish and you know that they're there, you know that they're small enough and won't eat anything. You literally throw your Ned rig out and you don't even move it. I mean, you don't move it at all for a minute, 2 minutes. You just let it sit.
That's how I fish in the fall too.
Yeah, I mean, like now, me personally, this time of year, especially because, like I said, with the color, I have the color's called the deal. It looks very shad, like a lot of gray and like a darker. It's got like a light gray and a dark gray. I actually hop it. So I'll cast it out and I'll hop it. Two reasons: one, it gives it an erratic action, and two, it helps it keep out of rocks. Like very few snags. You're always going to snag Ned rigs. You're always going to snag Ned rigs no matter what. So be prepared to lose them. Bring a bunch of them. Bring a bunch of hooks. But
Yeah, a lot of things, and that's a lot of the reason that I fish a light Ned rig is just like the drop shot, it doesn't get snagged as much. The cool thing about a Ned rig is even with an open hook like this, so you can see it's just an open hook. There's no weed guard. If you're fishing rock, don't throw it around wood.
yeah, no. I mean, you can.
Don't throw an open hook around wood. You can,
But
but
you're
gonna get hung. If you're fishing around rock, it always stands. The way the heads are designed, it's going to stand straight up. So if you just shake your rod, it'll usually just pop right off that rock.
Yep.
And then you just go right back to fishing. A lot of times you'll get bit when it pops off that rock.
The other thing I really like about Ned rig is the hookup ratio is actually pretty good. The hookup ratio is very good.
The hook sharp.
Yeah.
I like that.
Is this a Z-Man?
No, that's a XO.
Interesting.
So the St. Lawrence. I never even fished them. I literally just opened the pack today to rig one up.
Is that what the bait is as well?
No, that's a Strike King Ned Ocho.
Interesting. So, like I was saying, the hookup ratio on a Ned's actually pretty good, and because when you think about it, the hook's exposed. It's a small bait. There's really not a very high chance that they're just going to get the tail like they would on like a Senko or something. So,
I mean, how many fish did I have? I was throwing a wacky rig on Friday when we were out on Friday.
Pull the tail off,
and you'd actually, I had it on an O-ring, and you'd actually see where they would pull the Senko through the O-ring.
Yeah. And
the O-ring would be like over here on the end, like on the tip of the tail, because they were just grabbing hold of the end of it. So a Ned rig's a really good small presentation. It's very compact. Just because it's small, it catches small fish, it catches big fish, it catches everything in between, especially when it comes to smallmouth. A lot of times, when you think about largemouth, you big bait, big fish, right? You throw a big jig or, you throw a big spinner bait, something like that. A lot of times the smallmouth, the smaller bait is really key. They'll key in on smaller bait, small, crayfish, small shad. They're not eating big gizzard shad like largemouth are. Well, they eat gizzard shad, absolutely, but for the most part, they're eating like threadfin. Like there's a lot of threadfin shad in Conowingo, and that's what they've been keying on. So the threadfin shad up there aren't much bigger than this.
Right.
They're maybe 3 inches long. So being able to match that size to what they're eating is important, and Ned rig's a really good way to do that. I mean, it's a nice small bait, small compact bait, not a lot of action. Conowingo is pretty heavily pressured.
Yeah.
It gets a lot,
especially recently, like the last couple of years, there's been a lot of fish up there.
It gets real pressured. So your Ned rig is a really good way to target those highly pressured fish.
One other thing I would say about a Ned rig too, and Paul's definitely going to laugh at me when I say this, but like Friday, for example, we went out and I fished the Ned rig most of the day, and I actually kept complaining about how I kept catching so many small fish on the Ned rig, and then I ended up catching the best fish of the day, which was 3.5 pounder for a Ned rig,
3.32 or something like that.
Right.
Yeah,
so
that was a good one.
If you're catching small fish on the Ned, you shouldn't necessarily change it up to try to target bigger fish. A lot of it is you just may not be around them. If you're catching fish on the Ned, keep throwing it. In the team tournament, a Ned rig is a fantastic follow-up bait. No matter what the guy on the front of the, especially for you, co-anglers.
That's exactly what we were doing on Friday. You were throwing a Ned rig, and I was throwing random other stuff. I was fishing deeper water, trying to figure out, if fish were deep or if they were up shallow. So we were kind of 1-2 punching them. I was fishing deep rock in 20 to 27 feet with a drop shot, and Tony's casting to the bank with a Ned rig, and Tony outfished me probably 5-1 that day. But
a lot of the fish were like that big though.
Yeah, I mean there was a lot of small fish, but we caught a lot of keepers that day too. So
the thing about a Ned rig too is, and we actually have a good edit that we're going to put out here eventually. But we sat in a certain spot on Conowingo, and we both threw Ned rigs and caught a fish every cast for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Made the same cast. I mean, no giants, but a couple like 2-pounders in the mix.
Yeah, we had a couple 2-2 pounders.
It was the Ned rig is
It's a good bait. It's a good get bit bait.
It's a great get bit bait, and a lot of times it will show you where fish are more than anything.
I like it. I mean, it's a good, when the bite's tough, and sometimes like you get on Conway and go and not running water, and there's no current.
Yeah,
it's just a tough bite. You can throw that Ned rig and get a couple of bites and put a couple of fish in the boat, which really gives you a lot of confidence.
Right.
And I think the biggest thing with tournament fishing is getting those 5 fish in the boat.
Yep.
You get
Absolutely.
5 fish in the boat, you relax,
Yep.
then you can go do some other things, and it really opens your mind and what you think about what you need to do.
Right. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. And that was a big thing. So a little bit of tournament recap because, we're talking about it. Me and Kevin on Sunday, we started one of the spots that me and him have been fishing now for a couple weeks. I've caught them really well there before. We didn't catch any there. We pulled up on the second spot, didn't catch them. And I said, well, here we go. Pulled the net out and 4 casts, had 4 keepers. Now they weren't big, but that's 4 more keepers than we had before.
And it allowed you to relax.
Exactly.
And then go do what you knew you needed to do.
And that's exactly
and
what
not
happened.
panic.
Exactly. It's exactly what happened. Now, I didn't really pull the Ned rig out later. What I did do, and I'll say this, and we did talk about this earlier in the show, is like Paul said, when you find them, it's the same cast. Mm-hmm. So let's say you find them and you're catching them on a crankbait, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then they stop biting the crankbait. Don't leave because they quit biting the crankbait. Throw out the drop shot, throw out the Ned rig. Give them something different, especially this time of year when they're grouped up. And a lot of times you can get that school to either refire up or you can catch some of those fish that you didn't get before.
And sometimes remember, like when, especially this time of year, when those fish get grouped up, if you're sitting there beating on them for 20, 30 minutes, sometimes you just got to let them cool off.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Just leave.
Definitely.
Leave, come back.
Yep.
Just because they stop biting, you can leave for a half hour, come back a half hour, 45 minutes later, and they'll start eating again.
Yep.
So Ned rig is definitely, it's a great beginner bait for smallmouth. If you've never smallmouth fished before, you want to go someplace, someplace that's got a lot of largemouth, and a lot of smallmouth, throw a Ned rig.
Oh, definitely.
And that'll help you start to locate, like how they're positioned and once you break down the water. You can also fish a Ned rig you can cover a pretty good amount of water with a Ned rig. For something that you're fishing slow. I mean, I can definitely cover a lot more water with a Ned rig than I can with like a drop shot or a Texas rig, because of the variety of ways that you can fish it.
Real quick before we go on to the next bait, I want to just briefly for the Ned rig. My rod setup for it, I use a 6.6 Ardent medium. It's got a really soft tip. That's primarily for fighting the fish. Ned rig, you really want to go with a lighter rod, medium to a medium light. Some brands, a medium is a little bit lighter than others. So have a rod that's a medium with a little bit of a light tip. It helps to cast and it helps to fight the fish. You definitely,
that's a good point. That's really important because most Ned heads have a really light wire hook.
Yes.
So you don't need to horse them. You cannot horse them. You will bend hooks. I did on Saturday. You bent the hook on 2 or 3 fish.
And the hook set on this is not a dramatic hook set. A lot of times you just really into them, leaning into them a little bit. When I get on them, I'm really good on Ned rig. I actually find myself setting the hook too hard and either breaking off.
Yeah, you get excited.
Right. Yeah. So kind of keep that in mind when you're fishing it.
And you want to fish light line.
Yeah, 8-pound test at the
6
most.
or 8
at the most. 8-pound at the most.
Yeah, I don't fish anything over 8 pound on a Ned rig. Anything over 8 pound really affects what little action it does have. It doesn't fall right. It just falls way better when you're on 8 or 6. And again, you have a really light wire hook, so light line, light rod. I throw Ned rig on a 610 medium light, very light rod, because you need it to fight the fish.
Yeah.
Light, my drag is set light. I got a really limber rod because you're going to bend these hooks if you try to horse a fish in. It's just, that's how, it's just the technique. You have to take it easy with the fish. So make sure your rod setup is like, to be fair, I throw a Ned rig on the same rod that I throw a drop shot on. I also throw, since we didn't mention that with the drop shot, it's in our drop shot video, but a 610 to a 7.3 medium light, very, very limber rod. Looks like it's going to break into. If you see how light it is, the weight is bouncing the end of the rod, because I want that really light rod to be able to get those fish in without bending that hook, and we're breaking that light line. So reel is pretty important too. You want to make sure that you have a good rod, or I'm sorry, a good reel with a good drag. So, hey Dan. So we're not going to talk about hair jigs tonight. It didn't make our top 5 list, but hair jigs
honorable mention
are
for sure.
definitely definitely an honorable mention. I do enjoy throwing hair jigs. I don't throw them a lot though. To me, they're very situational.
Yeah, very. But they can catch you some hammers. They can definitely catch you some big fish. I caught my first fish on a hair jig this year, and it was pretty awesome. I've never actually thrown it a ton, but it was pretty cool. My last thing I want to say about Ned rigs. What was I going to say? No, there's a lot of
Riverboat Rob, what's up, dude?
Riverboat Rob is on. Rob is out of his element because we're talking about smallmouth. That's why he's not here today. I have one more thing I wanted to say about Ned rigs. It's going to come to me, I promise, and we'll probably jump back into it. But I think we're ready to get on to the next bait.
So I think the next bait we're going to talk about is a staple in anybody's smallmouth box, and that's a jerk bait. I'm not going to get into brands of jerk baits. We've talked about those already.
I remember the Ned rig. Sorry, not to derail the jerk bait conversation. Last thing, a lot of times the bite with a Ned rig, you won't feel it. If it feels like you have a wet sock on the line, set the hook. It's a fish.
Yep. Yeah.
Biggest thing about it, people miss a lot of fish like that. The second most common bite with a Ned rig is you'll feel like a pop in your line. That is it.
Yep.
You're not going to run away with it. They're not going to like do, 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 do. A lot of times it's either like a small pop in the line or just a wet sock. Exactly. Yeah. A wet sock 90% of the time. Set the hook. Reel your fish in. Now to jerk baits.
So jerk baits. So again, like we mentioned earlier, this time of year there's a lot of bait, and when there's a lot of bait, it's hard to beat a jerk bait. It's different fishing a jerk bait for smallmouth than it is for largemouth.
Very different.
I fish a jerk bait for smallmouth pretty much as fast as I can. Very, very violent jerks of the rod. Where largemouth, usually if I'm fishing a jerk bait for largemouth, I'm fishing cold water, and it's just a just barely tapping it. Where if I'm fishing for smallmouth, I'm just jacking it. They like a lot of action to it. It doesn't matter how cold the water is. Generally, if I'm just cracking it hard, and they will eat it. I'm not eating it right now.
No, they're not.
Didn't get a bite on jerkbait in 3 days.
We probably caught 30 keepers on Sunday in the tournament, and one of the keepers came on a jerkbait, and we got rid of that fish about 20 minutes later.
Yeah. So I haven't been able to get bit on a jerkbait for some reason.
I don't think so.
Honestly, I don't think the water's cold enough.
So that was my next point. So when do you throw a jerkbait? Now, so smallmouth will eat a jerkbait pretty much any time of the year.
I mean, I've caught them good on a jerkbait all the summer. So
right.
It's not like it's a specific time of the year. If you can find the fish, if you find a big school of fish, doesn't matter if it's middle of the summer, you can catch them on a jerkbait. If they're eating, they'll eat a jerkbait. But they really eat the jerkbait well, my opinion, 55 degrees and below.
Yes. Yep.
So
the water
55 to 45.
It's almost there, but it's not there yet.
Yeah, we're still seeing. I mean, it's high 50s, low 60s on Conway Go right now. So I don't think it's quite cold enough for the jerkbait bite to really fire off. Doesn't mean you still can't catch them on a jerkbait. I got on a really good jerkbait bite one summer. It was in July, I think, and it was just.
Now we have comments. All of a sudden, from okay, here we go.
So
cool.
I probably in like an hour probably caught like 25 on jerkbait, and just ripping it as hard as I could. That was a pretty crazy day. We ended up getting caught in a very bad thunderstorm because they were eating so good.
So colors for me,
shad colors, always.
Yes and no. Now, for me personally, the color of jerkbait I'm going to throw is dependent on the water clarity, especially on Conolingo because you have a big difference, right?
But I'm still throwing shad colors. I'm just throwing brighter shad colors.
Yeah. Like I'll give it away. It doesn't bother me. One of my favorite jerkbaits right now that I really like is the Berkeley Stunner. I really like that bait, and I've been catching them on the freaking bright orange one, like I did for no reason.
Yeah.
Now I do well on it when the water is actually kind of nasty and dirty. A lot of people will tell you a jerkbait's a clear water bait. It probably does a little bit better, maybe, but I think you can definitely throw it when the water's got some stain to it. You just want to throw a little bit of a brighter color. The clearer the water, the more natural shad type colors you want to throw. A little bit more of your clear, something like that. Yep.
This IU, I believe.
Don't be afraid to throw that chartreuse jerkbait. Don't be afraid to throw that bright orange one or the bright pink one.
I do like a little bit of chartreuse on my jerkbaits, especially when I'm fishing for smallmouth. Smallmouth just like they just like chartreuse.
Definitely.
So a lot of times I'll fish something with like a chartreuse belly, a little bit of chartreuse on the tail or something, something like that. Up to like even a pale chartreuse full body. There's a shadow rat makes a color, I believe it's called a haymaker. And it's like a frosted chartreuse body. I've done really well with that. It's got like an olive back chartreuse sides. I fish that usually if the water's a little stained. If it's water clean, I usually throw like a pro blue or something like that. You're just your standard colors. You don't have to overthink it. Just again, smallmouth are sight feeders. So if you match the hatch, that's kind of that's kind of the deal. They're going to eat things that are similar, that look similar. I'm not saying you got to do it exact, but they're going to eat things that look similar to what they're eating. So if they're eating shad, you throw something shad color.
Yep.
You throw a shad color jerkbait or a white spinner bait or anything that imitates a shad. Even to your, like we went back to your Ned, the shad colored Ned, like that color of the deal, which is very shaddy, white.
Yep.
Anything that imitates a shad, that's kind of what you want to throw. When the water's a little dirtier, move to your chartreuses. Yep. You want something that's a little more visible. Again, remember, smallmouth are sight feeders, so they feed mostly by sight. So if the water's a little dirtier, you want something that is a little brighter and that can see a little bit better. Even sound too. If it's dirty water, throw a rattle trap.
Yep. That's probably an honorable mention, the rattle trap lipless crankbait, which I think is a perfect transition. And again, I did link our jerkbait Tackle Talk Tuesday episode in the description, so you guys can check that out for your in-depth jerkbait discussion. But I think what you just said is a really good transition to our next bait. And this one is definitely got to have it. And a lot of people overlook this one, believe it or not. And
we're going to save that one.
We're going to save it.
That's going to be that's our number one.
Okay, we'll save that.
That's my number one.
So the next bait is we're going to change up the gears a little bit, go back to the plastics game, but that is going to be
the classic smallmouth bait. So I would say that if you ask somebody what you should throw for smallmouth, they would say this bait right here, and that's a tube. So this is just a small tube. I believe this is a Bass Pro Shop teeny tube. Not that this is any better than a lot of the other tubes I throw. This is just stuff that I had hanging on the wall. So it's not in my boat, if that tells you anything. But just a simple tube with a jig head. So the jig head part is very important. It's not a tube with a jig head has a very different action than a Texas rig tube. So you want that. It's that popping action, kind of like Tony talked about earlier with the Ned rig. You're going to be just popping this off the bottom, so it looks like a shad or a crayfish, depending on the color they're using. This is a smoke tube, so smoke red and black flake. It's a very good shad imitation. Looks like a dying shad down on the bottom. It's just kicking around down on the bottom. When you're cracking it, it's popping up. Looks like a shad. If you throw a green pumpkin tube, looks like a crayfish. But tubes are really, really effective for smallmouth. You have a good hookup ratio because you're fishing an open hook. if you're fishing rock, they don't hang up rock, sand, grass. They don't hang up a ton, but they just catch fish. I mean, there's not much else I can say about a tube. I mean, it's a super simple bait. There's not a lot to it, and you can drag them, you can pop them.
It's kind of like the Ned rig before the Ned rig.
Yeah, it's very similar to the Ned rig. It just has a little more action. It's got these tentacles out here that if it's just sitting there on the bottom, they're moving with the current. So you got a lot more action than a Ned rig. You can tend to fish. It's a little easier to fish these a little deeper because you can throw like a 3/4 ounce head in these, no problem. Really get them down. On the St. Lawrence.
Oh, here we go. And in this corner,
we have our fearless leader,
a resident smallmouth expert.
It's me.
coming.
It's me. Whoa. Resident smallmouth expert.
Yeah.
So
I'm hyping you up.
I couldn't catch a smallmouth if it was in a fish tank.
on the St. Lawrence this year, I had my dad throwing a tube on the back of the boat. It was simple. It's something he knew how to fish. He's fished a tube before. We fished tubes for smallmouth for years, and we threw a 3/4 ounce head in it. And he was throwing it in 25 feet of water and smashing it.
A 3/4 ounce net head.
3/4 ounce tube head.
Oh,
A tube. So just smashing them on a tube. We pulled up on this one shoal, and it was like third cast. He kept a 4.5 pounder. It was super cool. But it's a very simple bait. Not a whole lot of ways to fish it. It's just something about a tube, smallmouth lake. It catches them everywhere. They're smallmouth. It's not a bad largemouth bait.
No, I've actually caught far more largemouth on it. And I was going to say, for me personally, not to dissuade anybody, I know the tube is an absolute smallmouth killer. I have zero confidence in the tube. I've caught like 3 smallmouth in my life on a tube.
I will
probably don't fish it the right way.
Promise I'll have a tube set on Saturday.
Oh, definitely.
I have a tournament on Conowingo on Saturday. So
now, to be completely fair, I have not given the tube the time that it deserves. So I probably need to start throwing a tube a little bit more. But that being said, it's definitely a fish catcher, and you should get some time. Now, rod and reel. There's 2 kind of schools of thought with the tube. So you see a lot of the guys on like Wired to Fish, Mark Zona talks about it, cracking a tube with bait caster. That's your 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce tubes. You're throwing it out on heavy line, and you're just bang, bang, kind of like almost like fishing a jerkbait, letting it sink and cracking it real hard.
So cracking a tube, actually easier done on a spinning rod.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So
I can see that.
Medium heavy spinning rod. I throw my tubes on a medium heavy spinning rod. It's actually a pretty heavy rod for what you think. The key with to cracking a tube, and cracking a tube is I'll explain it in a second because it's a really good technique for fishing a tube. So medium heavy rod. You can fish it braid the fluoro, but it's better straight fluoro.
Okay. Why?
Because there's stretch, and that's important for. I'll tell you in a second. So straight fluoro, 8 to 10 pound, and a very heavy, much heavier head than what you would think. So
you're not throwing 3/4 ounce.
You're not throwing 1/4 ounce. You're throwing 3/8 to 3/4.
Okay.
So cracking a tube essentially just allows the tube to basically it's almost going to sit in one place, and it's just going to pop and go right back. So you're cracking it on a slack line, and that's where the term cracking a tube comes from. If you do it on fluoro, if you have that bow in your line and you just crack it like that, it'll sound like a whip cracking.
Oh, that's cool as shit.
So you're basically just hitting the tube. So when you bring up that slack, you're bringing it up fast, and as soon as you hit that weight, you feel that weight, you stop, and it'll cause that tube to just pop up and drop down almost in the exact same spot. You're only moving it, maybe a couple of inches at a time. So it'll hop up off the bottom and right back down. Hop up off the bottom, right back down. You're keeping it in the strike zone a lot longer. Cracking a tube is really good. And it's funny you mentioned Mark Zona. Mark Zona is like the king of cracking a tube, and it's because of where he lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you got a lot of sandy bottom,
shoals,
and a lot of
shit like that.
A lot of grass.
Yep.
So that's why they're cracking a tube, because once you get in that sandy spot in that grass, you're trying to keep it in there as long as possible. So that's really where cracking a tube comes in. It's also really good in the grass, because when you're cracking it, it'll pop it out of the grass and it'll just drop right back in.
Mm-hmm.
Pop it out of the grass, drop it right back in. So when the cadence of it can be, and then wait, it can be fast, but you're always doing it on a slack line. And that slack line is it's almost like fishing a jerkbait in the wintertime, where you're just, you're hitting it, you're still hitting it hard, but you're only moving the bait so far. So cracking a tube is actually a really good technique. I've had pretty good success doing that on Conowingo in many years ago. Not recently. I haven't fished Conowingo a lot recently. I haven't fished a tube a lot recently, because I've been dry shotting, because that's what I like to do. So I like to look at the fish that I'm catching.
You making long casts with your tube?
Long cast, yeah, always. I'm casting it as far as I can. I'm not really. I'm fishing it in more in open areas when I'm fishing it for smallmouth. Rock areas. So if you have rock piles out there where you have areas where sand meets rock. That's where you want to throw your tube.
What's your typical retrieve for a tube? Are you always cracking it, or are you usually doing like a drag, a hop, or?
I'm either cracking it or dragging it. One of the two. I'm not really doing anything in between. Either there's not a whole lot of other ways to fish it.
Right.
You can pop it. I guess you can pop it real far off the bottom and drop it down. Sometimes that's good, but for me, I've had the most success either just dragging it, just like you're fishing a Texas rig, just dragging it along the bottom, or cracking it where you get that nice hop up off the bottom. Popping it works. Like if you're fishing a lot of rock, popping it works. Kind of like you said with the Ned rig, keeps it from getting hung up as much. As soon as it hits the bottom, you need to pop it.
Right.
If you're fishing a lot of like really heavy rock, where it's not just like a little rock pile surrounded by like sand, where it's just like rock everywhere. As soon as it hits the bottom, pop it, and it'll help keep it from getting hung up. Have a pretty good success doing that. But there's a few ways to fish it, but a million ways to fish it. In those three techniques, you can vary your retrieve so much. Different weights, different, that's going to give you a different fall rate. The key factor here, the lighter the weight, the less it's going to get hung up. Just like we talked about with the drop shot, just like we talked about with a Ned rig. The lighter the weight, the less it's going to get hung up. So you can, unless you're doing something for a specific technique, like cracking a tube, you really need a heavy tube. If you're just dragging it, drag as light a weight as you can get down on the bottom. Sometimes the wind might be blowing, or you got a lot of current, you got to fish a heavier 3/8 half ounce. But maybe you get out there on one of those real calm days, you can get away with a 1/4 ounce. I don't fish anything less than a 1/4 ounce on a tube. I don't really see the need, because most of the time I water on the bottom anyway.
Right.
It just helps to get down there faster. But that lighter weight, is going to give it a slower fall. And that speed of fall is really, a lot of times is what's going to get your bites. That can make a big difference when you're fishing salt plastics, whether it be a Ned rig or it be a tube or Texas rig, whatever. Sometimes you got to play around with that weight to get that fall speed right. You get that fall speed right, all of a sudden it's just bang, 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 and you'll start fishing.
I think it's time to move on to the number one smallmouth bait.
Number one smallmouth bait. Anyway.
It's if it's not number one for me, it's number two.
It's just the number one bait.
So our number one smallmouth bait is a crankbait.
A mid-depth crankbait.
A mid-depth crankbait. Absolutely.
That's a big piece of information right there.
So I typically am not fishing shallow for smallmouth. Shallow being less than 5 feet. I'm usually fishing a little bit deeper. Smallmouth tend to live a little bit deeper. Not saying you can't catch them shallow, because you can. You can catch them very, very, very shallow. But I have found that like the magic depth range is like 5 to 8 feet.
Yes.
I agree.
This time of year.
This time of year and springtime. Summertime. I'm out 25 to 35 feet of water. Tony was like amazed at the water that I was looking in the other day, because that's where I was looking. I was looking in 25 to 35 feet of water, and I've caught smallmouth in pretty much every body of water that I've ever fished in that deep water, whether it be the Lower Susquehanna, Conowingo Lake, Deep Creek, St. Lawrence, Tennessee, all over the place. I mean, you can catch smallmouth deep. However, certain times of the year they move up, and usually, like we talked about, they're following bait. And when they start following that bait, I mean, what's a better bait fish imitation than a crankbait? When they start eating shad, I'm throwing crankbait, because I can cover a ton of water. I can cover a ton of different depth, and it catches big ones.
Oh, it does. Yes, it does.
Biggest bag of smallmouth that I've ever caught on a crankbait. Caught every one of them on a crankbait in 6 feet of water. My biggest bag of smallmouth actually came from the Lower Susquehanna in Haverty Grace. It was 21.21 pounds. 21.21 pounds of smallmouth.
That was this year, right?
Yep, that was this spring on a crankbait, and they were just stacked up like me and Tony have been saying. If you catch one fish, in the colder months when the water starts to cool down or it's first starting to warm up, if you catch one fish, make the same cast.
The same cast.
I caught a lot of those fish that I caught in that big bag. I caught making the same exact cast, and I am not exaggerating, the same exact cast.
Yeah.
I caught 3 fish over 4 pounds making the same exact cast.
Yep. So
crankbaits. Now, what crankbaits are good for smallmouth? This is a killer. This is a DT6. I tend to go with smaller crankbaits for smallmouth because a lot of times the bait that they're feeding on is a little bit smaller. So this is a good imitation for those smaller shad that are on Conowingo right now. It's like the perfect profile. And the DT6, DT8. I'm a big
Slim.
I'm a big Rapala fan.
OG Slim's a really good crankbait as well.
OG Slim.
Mega bass.
Any shad.
Mega bass, because I throw my crankbaits into some bullshit, and I don't want to lose $25 bait throwing it into some gnarly stuff.
I throw it into some bullshit.
You must have a better job than me.
The DT6 is like maybe the best crankbait ever made. I mean, it's up there.
It's definitely up there. I mean, I've caught probably more fish on a DT6 than any other crankbait.
I'll tell you a crankbait that I haven't tested up on Conowingo yet, but it has very quickly taken over my heart as far as the crankbait game. Now, I'm a huge Mega Bass fan,
right?
Truly. But these UMA lures crankbaits, I've been throwing the freaking the skinny shad a lot recently, and I have just been absolutely tearing up some largemouth. I can't wait to test them up on Wingo. But
threw one a little bit the other day.
Yeah, Tyler's UMA cranks. I got the hoodie on. Seriously.
Yeah, his crankbaits are badass.
They're magical. So can't thank him enough for hooking us up with some of the magic.
I will say, when it comes to crankbait and smallmouth, I've never had a day where I just catch one smallmouth on a crankbait. Like, a lot of times, if you catch one on a crankbait, you can pretty much throw it the good majority of the day, because you're going to get more bites.
It's been a little
recently. It hasn't been great. Not gonna lie.
Thursday we did really well on crankbaits.
Thursday we did
a lot of fish on crankbaits on Thursday. Yep. Friday we couldn't buy a bite on a crankbait.
Same thing on Sunday.
Saturday we caught a couple fish on crankbaits.
It is crazy how quickly those things can change.
Well, conditions change. So Thursday, I think the reason we caught them so good on a crankbait on Thursday is the wind was howling.
Yes.
I mean, it was blowing probably 20.
Oh yeah,
Why does that creates current? Specific baits. It creates current, But why does it make specific baits shine more? Than
Well, I
other
think a
baits?
lot of it
So
is
it just makes moving. So
Yeah.
moving baits in general are going
Right.
to work better when the wind's blowing.
Anytime
Spinnerbait,
anytime it's
crankbait.
windy, I was just gonna say spinnerbait, chatterbait, something that's got a little bit of flash. You got that motion on top of
Yep.
the surface, creates um,
Anytime there's current, if you have current, moving baits are always going to are generally going to outperform slow moving baits.
So, do you prefer when you're up on Conowing, when you're fishing for smallmouth?
Mhm.
Are you looking for those wind blown areas? Are you searching for?
I'll answer
That is
first.
that is
I'm
that
not
is something.
specifically looking for windblown areas because, not specifically because it's
the seasonal pattern more than anything, I think.
locating the fish is really more important. So if the wind's blowing into an area that you know is holding fish, I'm going to change my tactics for targeting those fish. So
Wind blown is more of a largemouth thing.
I'm going to go to the
But
areas
what if
where I
that
know the
wind
fish.
pushes the bait?
It does, and that's
Definitely does.
100% why it's better.
So what if the bait's over here on this wind?
But if the bait's not, if the fish aren't there, if the bait's that, a lot of times smallmouth are holding to cover. They're not roaming following bait.
right?
So it may push the bait over here, and a few fish might follow them, but the majority of your fish are still sitting over here. So I'd rather target 30 fish than the 5 fish that are up chasing the bait.
Right.
So essentially, what you mean is, as that bait, and this is how we utilize these crankbaits. Is what I'm going through this whole entire thing right now. We're going to utilize these crankbait as this bait ball comes past these smallmouth. They'll pick out through the ball and go back to where they were and allow bait to pass. They don't actually just follow the bait.
Correct.
See, I feel that's a completely different pattern to their cousins, the largemouth.
No, largemouth pretty much do the same thing. I mean, they're just going to sit there.
It depends a lot on where you're fishing. Like if we're talking about this area, they're going to
depends on time of year or two.
Oh yeah,
summertime they're going to follow the bait a lot more than than sit there. This time of year with so much bait shallow, like they can just
they sit there and
they
wait
can just
for
sit
the
there
next
and wait
one.
for the next school to blow over. There's so much bait on Conowing Go right now. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Oh, there's bait everywhere. That's
how
what
many
makes it hard.
How many shad did I pull up on throwing? I was throwing a jerk bait. I was pulling shad off my jerk bait all day.
So that's what makes Conowingo difficult right now. Is you could the main school of thought when it comes to smallmouth is find the bait, find the fish. Well, right now you can find bait on Conowingo all day and not find a single smallmouth.
Right.
It's just the way it is. And I want to touch on that a little bit without giving away too much juice. So, and the reason why I say this is because me, Skylar, and Paul recently have spent a lot of time on Conowingo trying to figure this place out. And it requires a tremendous amount of time.
I still haven't figured it out.
So I'm not giving, I haven't either. Like I had a good day this last Sunday, but my bite's hit or miss. And I know why it's hit or miss. So I need to find some other shit. But that being said, if you're going to fish that place, be prepared to put in a lot of time with very little reward up front. It's not an easy place to fish. So I'm not giving away any specific spots. I will say this though.
It's not jumbo friendly either.
No, it's big. You can it's big, but it's not huge.
You can pick your launch areas.
Pick your launch area and stay within a zone. But if the fish aren't within that zone,
but usually with around around a lot of the ramps, you're generally going to be around fish. There's going to be fish near Glen Cove. There's going to be you can launch a John boat at 5-hole, and there's always fish in 5-hole and outside of 5-hole.
You can launch a John boat at Broad Creek.
You can launch a John boat at Broad Creek. There's usually fish to be found in Broad Creek, usually largemouth. You can launch it at Peach Bottom, and you can stay right there at Peach Bottom and catch fish off the rocks.
You could launch at Muddy Creek Access.
You can go
up top.
You can
I've caught a lot of smallmouth up there on a John boat, but I just think you're so much more limited because of how
you can
large Conowingo is.
What Muddy Creek Access, which is in between Holtwood Bridge and Muddy Creek, so you're launching like right into the rocks. Yeah. So you can go around up there. There's plenty of places.
Is that where we watched that guy smoke his John boat?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Dude, we watched this guy come around in an aluminum boat, and he just he cut the buoys and just raked his freaking lower.
So my buddy blew. He pretty much tore a lower unit off up there. We were just we were just going up that side. That's the reason I don't run up there. So we're just running up that side, and like he had a line that he thought was good, and I guess water level was a little lower or something, and just blew
left side.
Yeah, just crushed his lower unit, like it was right into a rock. I mean, we were running fast, so it's not we were only going maybe like 25, but yeah, I mean it just ripped the whole bottom of his lower. His whole no skeg left. Destroyed the gears.
Yeah,
Conowingo is a scary place.
Oh, it's there's a lot of there's definitely there's a fair number.
I think people that fish Conowingo and they like run everywhere on Conowingo have balls.
You should have. Well, we
I'll
seen
run anywhere but the left side of the rock.
There's
like we seen on Friday.
Not only is there rocks, there's freaking floaters out there everywhere. There's floaters everywhere on Conowingo.
I've hit more shit in the south part of that lake than up in the rocks. I'll be the first.
Floaters, those floaters, yeah.
But you nailed something a couple weeks ago, didn't you?
Yeah, we'll crack the prop. I fished up in the rocks all morning, didn't hit anything, and I was down by Glen Cove and hit a log. I'm like, wow, that's just awesome. You fish where it's supposed to be dangerous all day, where it goes from 100 foot to 2, you don't hit shit, and then you go run where it's, easily
35 feet
everywhere, and you smoke a log. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
Been there, done that.
That's how it works.
Yeah, it's Conowingo is a cool place. So if you want to target smallmouth, if you're looking to catch smallmouth, you've never caught smallmouth before,
that's the place.
If you're in the Hartford County area, Conowingo is a great place. Great place to catch smallmouth. Other places, to catch smallmouth, if you're in Western Maryland, Deep Creek's got some good smallmouth. Not a lot of big smallmouth out there.
Why is that?
So the
stream.
So I was told that by someone, and I don't know how much truth there is to it, but I was told that the smallmouth that were stocked in there came from the Ohio River, and the Ohio River has, if you watched the Bassmaster Classic on the Ohio River, Kevin Van Dam won it with a 3-day total of like 11 pounds.
Right.
Oh my God.
It's the lowest winning weight of any classic ever. And, like I said, I'm pretty sure it was 11 pounds.
Did he catch a bunch of fish too? Or was it just super tough?
It was to the point that Aaron Martin said he thinks he could have won it if he had dropped a 2-pound line. That's how tough the fishing was.
Jesus Christ.
I'm going to look this up.
2 pounds. It's like fishing for trout.
Yeah, I've never even conceptualized throwing anything less than 6. That's pretty crazy. But while Paul's looking that up for the full smallmouth, without giving away specific spots, because one, there's too many guys that put in a lot of time up there. Having good graphs is really important. This is super, super important. Use your graphs. Look stuff that you can't. If you have an area close to the bank that you run all the time, just get closer to the bank and scan it once. You'd be amazed at what you see, and start fishing those areas, and you'll find a lot of fish. Like just try different stuff for these guys. Like
15-12 in 3 days.
That is insane.
That's his 3 day. It was his 3-day total.
What was the big fish of that tournament?
That was the total.
That was a total for 3 days.
No
So
shit.
he averaged 5 pounds a day.
I'm guessing they haven't gone back there.
No, that was technically out of Pittsburgh.
Wow.
Where the Ohio, the Monongahela, and another river. I can't think of the other river off the top of my head. They meet, and yeah, it sucked. So 15 pounds over 3 days. Won the Bassmaster Classic. So I forgot where we were going there, but
About
so
the
Ohio,
Deep Creek.
yeah. So apparently, from what I heard, and again, I don't know how much truth there is to this, but the strain of smallmouth that are in Deep Creek came out of the Ohio River. Ohio River has notoriously small smallmouth, and that's why the smallmouth in Deep Creek don't get as big. It's not for lack of bait. There's a ton of bait out there. I've seen 3.5 pound smallmouth out there, but I've never seen anything bigger than that. I don't know. I've never really researched to see what the biggest smallmouth ever caught out there was, but you don't see big smallmouth. That's why it takes generally largemouth win tournaments out there. I said earlier I was fishing for smallmouth. I could not get largemouth to bite while I was out there. I knew I was not on fish to win. So I said, I'm going to fish the way that I like to fish. And I went out in 33 feet of water and caught fish. And it was fun. Well, you know, I had a blast doing it. Caught a ton of walleye too. That was kind of fun. I was catching some nice walleye. We could have had a great fish fry because I have murdered some walleye.
Walleye's good.
I smoked walleye.
Last time I fished out there, 99% of my keepers caught in practice and during the tournament were smallmouth. But they were, you know, you're 12, 13, 14 inch smallmouth. I remember going out there in high school, being a good friend of mine. We used to catch decent smallmouth, but that was, 2.5 pounders. I didn't realize how good of a fish that was until now.
Yeah, I've caught plenty of 3 pounders out there, 3 pound smallmouth out there, but it's hard to get one over, into that 4 pound range. I haven't seen one personally. I've caught some good ones out there with my dad one time, pre-fishing for SQT. But I think we had like 2 3.5 pound smallmouth. We had about 16 pounds that day we caught a couple good largemouth, a couple 3.5 pound smallmouth. But I've never really seen anything bigger than that. So smallmouth.
Yep.
My biggest thing when you're looking for smallmouth, outside of the baits that you're throwing, you're looking for rock.
Yeah.
A lot of structure.
You want hard rock bottom. And that's the biggest thing to look for. You can catch smallmouth out of the grass. I've caught a ton of smallmouth out of grass, various places, but they tend to kind of more on that hard bottom
and transitions.
Yep. Where that rock, if you can find a rock that meets sand, that's like money. So look for those areas where that rock meets that sandy bottom, or transitions from, hard rock bottom into a sandy bottom. That's the kind of stuff that you want to look for.
So, just to do a recap of tonight, what was our baits from 5th to 1st? What did we go over tonight? We did.
So in no particular, these are not ranked in any particular order.
Except the crankbait. That's number 1.
Except the crankbait. That's always going to be number 1 because it's crankbait.
It's a crankbait.
We had the drop shot.
There you go. Is that the old Bass Munitions worm one there too?
No.
That is not?
No, it is not.
Well, the Bass Munitions worm looks like that.
This is a Zoom Z drop. Again, as I was telling Tony earlier, these are baits that I just randomly pulled out of my extra stuff because it was raining and I didn't want to uncover the boat. So this is a Zoom Z drop on a Texas rig hook. I would never, just FYI, I would never nose rig a Texas rig hook, an extra wide gap hook like this. That would never happen. But
why wouldn't you?
Because there's hooks too big for it. Yeah.
Hook's too big. I fish a number 1 drop shot hook when I'm fishing an open hook. My hook is about this big.
Oh, I got you.
I do not lose fish.
Mm-hmm. I see.
So number 2, the second one that we talked about is the Ned rig. That's
just a little stumpy.
That's a Ned Ocho.
The Ned Ocho, the stumpy bait.
With an X-Zone Wars Ned head.
Ooh.
Fancy, huh?
That is a name that I really like.
You like X-Zone?
X-Zone makes fantastic baits.
Although I caught some smallmouth on the slammer when I was up to St. Lawrence.
I like the slammers and the hot shot minnows.
I really like this Ned. Check out that hook. That hook is like razor sharp.
That's a beefy head.
It's a 1/4 ounce. I bought them for the St. Lawrence.
That's 1/4 ounce.
Yeah.
It's big.
It's big for a Ned head. Tony fishes a 1/5 ounce. It's not that much of a difference.
No.
I usually fish a 10th.
I can feel it better when I pop it.
I think I fifth like 8th.
I fish a 10th.
8th
so
10th ounces. I usually fish a 10th ounce, except this time of year. Then we went to the jerk bait.
Number 3 is your jerk bait. So there's your jerk bait.
The old jerk bait. What kind of jerk bait is that one?
What kind of birch bait do you think that is?
Is it a mega bass?
It's not.
I don't know.
It's a copy of a mega bass. can tell.
Oh,
Very
God.
much a copy of it.
Is it a Berkeley?
No, this is a Lucky Strike RCSTX. This is a Rick Clunn designed crank. Rick Clunn designed jerkbait.
Yeah.
It's a Vision 110 copy. Pretty good bait. Very inexpensive. They're about I think about $9 or $10.
Mhm.
I've got a lot of fish on them. So if you're looking for like a cheaper jerkbait, you don't want to spend $25 on the Meg Bass. It's pretty good jerkbait.
When the fish are eating, they're eating. I feel like, but you know.
Yeah, I mean it's got good action. I mean, casts really well. So I mean it's just a good cheaper jerkbait. Next, we were talking about the tube, and this is actually a much smaller tube than I usually fish with smallmouth.
Mm-hmm.
I usually fish a very bulky tube, so this is a tender tube. That's what it is.
A tender tube.
So this is a Bass Pro Shops tender tube, which will catch a ton of fish. Like you will catch a ton of fish on that. I usually fish a 4-inch tube for smallmouth, and with a very meaty body, because most of the time I'm looking for bigger fish. So I fish a little bit bigger tube. That bulkier tube I've found just it's hung up less. I think because it's just thicker, so it doesn't get down in we get wedged in the rocks as much. And two, it's looking like a bigger crayfish, which is what I'm generally trying to imitate when I'm throwing a tube. Usually not on the whole shad thing, but who knows? And then the last one that we talked about was the old cranking bait, and you can throw any crankbait you want, but make sure that it's like a mid-depth crankbait.
Yep.
Mid-depth too. I will. You know what? I will even
5
say
to 8.
mid-depth to deep crankbait.
Yep. Down to like that 12 to 14.
14, 16 feet. If you have the key with those is have a small profile bait.
Yep.
That not always true, but generally with smallmouth, you're going to do better on a small profile bait. They tend to key on smaller bait better. That being said, I've wrecked them on Conowingo on a 6XD. I've just absolutely wrecked smallmouth on a 6XD. They will eat a big bait.
Oh, I've caught them on glide baits before.
Right. You've caught them on glide baits. I've caught them on 6XDs. I caught them on 10XDs in Conowingo. The first fish I ever caught on a 10XD was like an 8-inch smallmouth.
Mm-hmm.
Throwing a 2-ounce crankbait, and I catch an 8-inch smallmouth.
Smallmouth got attitude.
Yeah.
They're
So they'll eat bigger
they're
fish, but they
curious.
tend to key in on that smaller bait, which is why you're going to get a lot more bites on that smaller size crankbait.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your
Better hookup ratio.
DT6, a 3XD, striking 3XDs are really good bait for smallmouth. It's a very, very small profile bait. It'll get down to like 12 to 14 feet. So 3XD, DT6, Wigglewort's
Yep.
good smallmouth bait.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think of some other small profile baits that I throw. The Berkeley Fritz side, another good one. Figure the rest out on there.
Yes.
Throw it, try it out, see what works.
Strike King Series 5, Series 4, anything in that size range, anything in that. Again, you just don't want to oversize crankbait. You don't want to go out there throwing I'm not going out targeting smallmouth, throwing like a Strike King, KVD 8.0, freaking 5-inch square bill, because they're not eating that size bait. Smallmouth have small mouths.
Yes. Believe it or not, they do.
So
small mouths and big attitudes.
Yes, that is for
Small
sure.
mouths and big attitudes.
So check your smaller crankbaits. Anything with a small profile that can get down a little deeper is generally going to be a good choice. Anything you can think of?
That 3XD is one of the original crankbaits that I've ever seen thrown up on Conowingo.
3XD is always a good one. I'm trying to. There are some crankbaits in my mind that the Lucky Craft 1.5 DD That's a really good smallmouth bait if you're looking for a wider action. It's about the same size as a DT6, but it's got a wider wobble.
The
Runs about
UMA skinny
6
shad.
If you get them up shallow,
UMA skinny shad. I haven't
yeah.
had a chance to try them out on smallmouth. I threw one a little bit on Thursday, but where we
You know
were,
what?
the crankbait bite got was not really on. So
Remember our fantastic tournament up on Conowingo this
shit.
summer? You know what will destroy the UMA lure skinny shad up there?
Smallmouth that big.
Well, smallmouth that I think I caught a couple smallmouth that big up there that day. But there's freaking little. Are they bluegill up there in the rocks?
I think they're
Bluegill, sunfish, rock
sunfish of some
bass.
kind.
They're like black though.
They're
Gotta
probably
be
like
bluegill.
green sunfish.
They're some type of sunfish, and they're like black, and then the underside of them is like yellow and blue, and they're gorgeous looking fish. Wreck the shit out of this thing. They're only this freaking big. Destroy this crankbait. Like anytime you would get it right in the rocks, like right on the freaking ledge, and it would hit the rocks. Like this bait dives to like 6 feet, 7 feet. They would hit like that. They would hit a rock at like 3 feet, and one of these things would just come out of the rocks and just freaking just a knot and just smoke it. I think they make their like nests and shit in there.
I was tearing them up in 30 feet of water.
Yeah,
I caught so many bluegills.
Oh really?
On Friday.
Damn.
Just dropped it. I was drop shotting in 30 feet of water, and I'm like, there's a fish down there. I don't know what it is. Don't.
Any
bluegill.
slabs?
No.
No,
My buddy was
man.
catching some nice ones. He was catching some nice ones on Saturday.
I'd really like to go out.
Crappies?
And crank some
No.
crappie up. Let's go out and go crappie fishing. So we need to videotape a crappie fishing.
Yeah, it's about that
We're in
time.
Johnstown.
Yeah.
For fishing docks.
Yep, it's getting to be that time.
Mhm.
I love crappie fishing.
3-inch Berkeley gulp minnow.
We're definitely
Yeah.
gonna have to have a episode about that. I like the.
Throw that under a slip
Oh,
bottom.
we're gonna
I'm
videotape
the
that.
slip cord guy, man. I throw one color grub and one color slip bobber
Nah, dude.
all day. Just
We're gonna go target crappie in 10 to 13 feet.
well, if we're doing that, I'm bringing my bass gear.
Oh, I know where you're.
We're gonna go target some bigger crappie. than
For
last
this
year.
Dude, the
The
reason
crappie
why
last year were decent here and there, but I know that there's a specific spot that hold. I don't know. I have no idea where it does, but I know it does, and it would be a whole different experience trying to learn how to target crappie in deeper water. Not having freaking live scope, especially.
right.
I mean, 2D sonar is just as good. We've been catching them on 2D sonar for years anyway.
Yeah,
Some old timers catch them on a flasher.
Yeah, I don't know how they do that.
it's cool seeing some of the guys on my Facebook and stuff go out and wreck some big slabs, and it fires me up to kind of want to
Yeah,
learn how to do it.
Ivan's been tearing them up. Ivan
Yeah.
and Logan both.
Yeah, Ivan and Logan have been killing them.
Yeah, they've been catching some good ones.
So it's cool. It's cool to see that. And
In an
I think-
area we like to fish.
Yeah, and I see that there's freaking. I see that we caught a lot of. Me and you caught a decent amount of crappie last
Yeah,
year.
it's fun.
These crappie they're pulling out are like.
Oh yeah, they're like almost dinner plate size.
Yeah, they're like dinner plate size crappie, and I'm just like, how do you do
You should see
that?
So you should see some of the crappie that we've caught.
What the fuck is this?
Girls 18 online. New dating for all tastes and ages.
Oh, you're getting banned.
We're not going to click on it?
No,
Damn it.
No.
Why not?
you're blocked.
Oh my god, that's
Are
awesome.
all of them like that?
I think so. Oops, something went wrong.
Oh,
We'll have to
no,
block
it's the
them
same.
later.
It's from. The
I thought it was interesting, but apparently you guys saw
Well, that was the first time we've had that happen.
yeah, that was interesting. Didn't they know this is a PG-13 area?
Was it 18 plus?
I think it's you deleted it, so now we can't ever find out.
I mean, it got Tony pretty excited.
I'll take it where I can get it. No, I'm kidding. But
The dark web, the
Right.
pages of the internet.
the crappie fishing is actually like a ton of fun. Like I've never done it.
I enjoy
So,
crappie fishing.
I never got into it till last year, and just because I knew where they were, I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna go out and try this. And I was like, okay, this is actually a ton of fun because
Get
It
you,
was.
get you like an ultralight rod.
oh yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
you know, and
Well, the
like
thing
anything,
is,
anything is fun on an ultralight rod.
Well, the thing of it is the time of year when I crappie fish heavily, when we were doing it last year, the bass fishing kind of sucks. So it's like you go out there and you're going to catch a ton of fish. It's not very serious. You can kind of screw around, and it's like a roots thing. Like that was the first time I fished with a bobber and like a small jig for like 15 years, and I was like, oh my god, this is so much fun.
I watched Adam Graham and catch like a 10-pound snakehead on a fucking like a medium light 6-foot
What time of year?
spinning pole. I think it was in the spring. And I was literally like, after he did that, like he fought this thing for like 10 minutes. And I was just like, that looked like so much fun. I need to get one of those. What's up, Greg?
One of the guys one of the best snakehead, I won't say one of the best snakehead fishermen I know. One of the guys that catches the most snakeheads that I know down on the Eastern Shore. he uses like $10 Walmart rods. Like those little, like bright colored spinning rods.
Yeah.
Like that's what he uses with like 6-pound line. Like, and that's what he caught one a few years ago that I think was 17 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
That's all he uses. He's 6-pound line. The line, he's like, yeah, I'll just use the line that comes along. Like if it breaks, I just buy a new one. It's $10.
Jesus Christ, it's awesome.
But he has like 5 of them. He sets 5 of them out with minnows, and then just What's that? No, he's minnows. He's beefing. He's throwing minnows.
Okay. That's cool.
He tears them up though. Like down on the shore, he's caught.
Greg said,
"Did we lose our Facebook feed?
Maybe."
Oh yeah,
Billy.
Yeah, we did, didn't we?
We had to refresh it because we had a sexual predator potentially.
Somebody was trying to sexually assault Tony.
Well, that's not abnormal by any stretch of the imagination. But what is up with the Facebook feed? Are we still there? Question mark. Oh, Billy. What about now? Well, luckily we were kind of at the end of the show anyway. Are there any comments on that say if you scroll down?
It's not working for some reason. Whatever. We're at the end of the show, anyways.
Yeah, we'll put a comment on that and let everybody know that we'll fix that. But thanks again for joining us for the smallmouth episode. We're gonna do some more of these as well.
And crappie episodes.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna have some crappie fishing footage and shit.
Yeah, winter, especially when we get into the wintertime, we'll definitely hit some crappie up. Crappie yellow perch in the
crappie.
When the bass fishing sucks in February, you can always get crappie and yellow perch.
I got some video coming out of the bass stocking we did the other week too.
Oh, cool.
So that'll be kind of cool. I'm gonna try to get together with Rob and get some film and put it together for that, so we can drop that here pretty soon.
Yeah,
but
show us exactly where you dumped it.
Yes,
please.
Yes,
and we're gonna have a good smallmouth edit
coming. Go catch those 1.5 pounders.
And then I haven't looked at the footage that we got, so I don't know exactly what's on there or how it came out. So and I was shooting it from my windshield too. So
as long as it's a wide lens, it should have got both of us.
Yeah, it gets my whole front deck. So
cool, too easy.
I mean, it should be fine.
I kind of want to look into one of the GoPro lenses.
Before we get off, Greg's asking for a boat update.
Boat update is horrible. There isn't really one. It's still at Bowers. The warranty moved over. They wrote it up for a hook in the aluminum hull. Basically, where the hull under the boat meets the transom, they're saying there's like a bow in it, and what it's doing is the water's like hitting the back and then pushing the bow of the boat down.
Yeah.
And which is, I'm hoping they're just going to claim it as a factory defect and do whatever they need to do to fix the problem. However, I'm scared somehow they're going to try to blame negligence. But I don't really know. Ranger, it has a lifetime warranty. It's a 2021. It's
got like 20 hours.
It's got 18 hours on it, and 4 of those hours are freaking not real because it's just when the key's been turned on, right, and the motor's not even running. So it's a boat with like 14 hours on it. I would really hope they would, correct that. There's no visual dents, no visual scrapes, in the area or anything like that.
Shouldn't pull from the key being on. because they're pulling from the computer, so it should have to be ignited. The engine would actually have to be on.
18 hours doesn't seem right because I got it with 10 on it.
It was 12 when you got it. I mean, I could see putting 6 hours on it.
I didn't use it that much.
Man, it doesn't take a whole lot, and we were trying to figure out a lot of stuff. I mean, you think about like the day we were out. That was probably close to. We probably put close to 2 hours on it that day.
Well, regardless, 18 hours.
But still, under 20 hours, it shouldn't be. You should be fine.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it. I think you just gotta wait it out. I mean, unfortunately, my boat's in the shop too, but I don't have to worry about it. I'm just running like shit right now.
I watched your video the other day. I was at work.
Basically, I thought it was fuel lines, so I did do fuel lines and filters on it because it's something I could do. But sometimes it doesn't want to start. Like you'll crank it, it'll fire right away, and then it dies. It wants to surge, and then it's just like an intermittent issue. Sometimes you start it up and it runs great all day. Sometimes you start it up and you gotta like let it warm up for 20 minutes before it wants to do anything. So I just got tired of screwing with it. I said, well, the sooner I get it at the shop, the sooner I get it back. So I don't think it's a huge issue. Like it's definitely not blowing up or anything. It's just probably a fuel pump. Something
fuel pump could be injectors. Could be,
it could be. It's luckily it's I don't like this. I don't like to say this, but luckily it's an Evinrude, so they hook it up to a computer and they tell you, okay, this is what's wrong.
That's like every new motor,
right? But
yeah, the only problem is it's an Evinrude and it's hard to get parts for them.
You literally hook it up to a computer. It says, hey, this is wrong. Replace it, and then you get the boat back.
I literally get that on my cell phone with Mercury Vessel View.
Yeah.
Except I didn't have any codes because my boat sucks.
Yeah, I run a carbureted motor.
Yeah.
So you don't have that luxury. They actually have to look at it and like troubleshoot stuff.
I have to look at it and figure out what's wrong with it, and then me and Chad have to tear it apart in his garage. Because I'm too cheap to take it to the.
I'm just
if
not.
we can do it, we might as well.
I'm just
I'll
not
fix
there.
anything if I can.
I'm just not there when it comes. These computerized DFIs are a whole nother.
Oh no, I'm not breaking it. If anything ever happens to my engine, it'll be going into the shop because I'm not.
If I had a new engine, I'd do the same thing.
I just don't trust myself with a computerized direct fuel injection.
Not when it's still under warranty. I'm not.
Oh hell no! If it's still under warranty, definitely not. So I wish the shop, but
yeah, that's
I'm not trying to pay $150 an hour for my 2003 carbureted Yamaha.
I definitely don't blame you.
But that's where the boat situation stands for both of us right now. I'm hoping to hear back something soon, and I don't know, man. I'm really just nervous they'll try to claim negligence or something, but that's my biggest fear. Hopefully they'll fix the problem, whether they fix the actual hull or they just give me a new hull, whatever they decide to do. I just want to have a fresh boat for spring. That's pretty much where I'm at right now. If I can get the boat back in freaking March, that would be great.
Yeah, I think you'll be all right. I think you'll get it back before then.
Hopefully. We'll see.
Yeah.
So,
all right,
everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Everybody have a great night.